Y'all, I'm so excited to welcome into my podcast today Jesse and Danielle Younger. Jesse is the son of Ann Younger, so if you listen to episode 7 of mine with my friend Ann talking about a friend loves at all times, then you're going to know that Jesse is a pretty cool dude since his mama is Ann. But Jesse and Danielle just have a story that is so compelling, and I got to know them, and I thought, y'all need to hear their story. The world needs to know and see the obedience, the step-by-step way that God is doing the impossible for them in their lives. I know you're going to enjoy hearing from this amazing young couple. They have a home building business and they'll talk about that, but their story is so compelling and so beautiful, and I know it's going to encourage you and help you in your own walk. So sit back and listen as Jesse and Danielle Younger tell their story of the impossible coming true.
Plant a seed, no one knows what it will be. Watch it grow, watch it grow, watch it grow, watch it grow. Your small beginning.
So, Jesse and Danielle, I cannot believe I get to interview y'all. I have fallen in love with y'all even more than ever after spending a few weeks with your parents at their lake house very near you, and fell in love with your children, and just so honored. And while I was with you, I'm like, y'all have a story to tell and the world needs to know it. And so, so tell us a little bit about, where you are and what, some of your dreams, and just take it. Go wherever you want to. I trust you.
Well, Sarah, I think both have to say we have the same gratitude for you. And while we've known you for many years, something that I just think is so amazing is also getting to know you through your book, Small Beginnings. It has just given me the utmost respect for you and your journey. And honestly, it's spoken to my life as kind of a working mom and somebody who's busy, and knowing that the Lord just gives us that endurance and places all of these things just perfectly in our path, and doesn't overwhelm us. And Sarah, you have done so much in your life, and looking at your story and connecting the dots in hindsight, it gives me so much encouragement for what's to come for our own story. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and for sharing your book with me and just to the world.
Oh, thank you, Danielle.
We are living the life we've always dreamed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's crazy to stop and think that this is our life. Like, just crazy.
Yeah, but it had to start somewhere. So, Jesse, how you had to dream it first. So, do you want to share with the audience like your first dreams of this and how Danielle got into the picture to share this dream with you?
Danielle was in the picture long before I was ready for a girl like Danielle. We were her best friend and my best friend were cousins, and so we were always around each other in college at A&M. And again, I just wasn't mature enough for a girl like that, so nothing ever happened. And I went off to California to go work for oil and gas company, and was doing my thing. She was doing hers, and came back for a football game in November, a Nebraska football game. I'll never forget it. And we were at a tailgate before the game, and there she was. And she had homemade cookies, which always helps. And it was a great game, but all I could think about was her the whole game. And we ended up winning. So we went out and celebrated afterwards, which was just a blessing because we got to extend our time together. And it was just a great time to really just get to know her and spend time together. And it was so powerful and so just man, I knew right then and there that she was special, that I ran away. Like, I literally ran away. We were at, at the bars at A&M, and it was just like, man, this is something I don't want to mess up. And I just, I could just, I was like, this has been a great night. I don't want to mess it up. So I literally ran home. I ran home 5 miles to where we were staying, and just, I ran. And that's how I like expelled this wonderful energy. Just like, I ran home. And thankfully I bolted without even saying goodbye. I left my sweater with her. And so that was kind of the excuse, that A&M, that blue A&M sweater that we still have. That was the excuse to kind of touch base and kind of form up the text messages and the calls, like, hey, I think you stole my sweater last night.
Yep.
And then from then on, it just, it just kept going.
I mean, just the start of our relationship for me was really the first realization of there's no happenstance in life. Like, all of those little small details were worked out long before we knew. And to look back and see where God showed up in all of those moments is just so special. I mean, we were both mid to late 20s at this point. We both had careers in the oil and gas industry. We were both in separate parts of the country just the day before we met. I mean, I was in a oil field class in New Mexico, and Jesse was in California, and God just so happened to get that plane ticket for both of us to be there at the same time. And that is when, I think for me, it was clear that the Lord was showing up for me, and Jesse helped guide me just in my faith from that point on. And I'm ever, ever grateful for that.
That is such a beautiful story. And it's so wonderful to give God the credit. Like, he knew before the beginning of time. I mean, we have scripture that shows that he planned us before he even created and spoke the earth into being. And so, the choices that y'all made to say, yes, you're the one. And so how long have y'all been married? And tell us a little bit more as it progressed from that first date to where you are today.
Right. I mean, it was every single little detail after that seemed to happen so effortlessly. But from an outside perspective, I think could have looked chaotic. But for us, it was so peaceful. We were engaged within 6 months and married 3 months after that. I think in worldly standards, that's very quick. Jesse left that corporate cushy job with a major oil and gas company only 3 months after we met.
Yeah, we met. That game was in November. And I left in February, and I was home on Valentine's Day.
But I think you should tell the story about like how God spoke to you that night when it was like you were on your knees and I was in Texas, and it was just clear that he was supposed to take that leap of faith, quit that job and move to Texas. Yeah,
that was the kind of the first moment in my walk with Christ that he just, being an engineer, I'm a spreadsheet guy, and big time, and everything has a spreadsheet, and all the logic, all the spreadsheets, even close family members were telling me, you don't just up and leave this great job for a girl you just met 3 months ago. Like, that just doesn't, you don't do that. But I was torn. And, God made it so clear to me, and it was an uprooting in my heart. Like, I had grasped onto this, I thought I had control mentality, and that was an uprooting of that mentality that night when God spoke to me and said, no, it's this girl's going to be your wife. And yeah,
And come back to Texas where she is.
that's right.
And so I want to point out that this risk taking, this walk of faith, that we just want to encourage others that are going to hear your story to know that you do have to get out of your comfort zone.
You do.
You know, you have to get out of the boat to walk on the water.
Yeah.
You can't just sit there. And so, yeah, thanks for giving that example, Jesse. And in this risk of, you weren't engaged yet, you were still dating, but you knew from God that He made it very clear. And so he's the rudder. He's the one that gives us direction. And that's so beautiful.
So, gosh, fast forwarding to Houston life, we settled in Houston, but we never felt truly settled. We ended up getting married, like I said, 3 months after we got engaged, and Houston was great at the time. Jesse ended up getting that corporate job again with another company, and we were stable, but
We were doing everything that we were supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We great education, great jobs,
Yeah.
great house, all the ticking the box, but our hearts never felt settled.
Our evenings were filled with, we lived right off Terry Hershey Park, which is a great park in Houston. It was like our only getaway from the city. We'd go and just go on these walks, just her and I. And most of it was me venting about just my corporate job and like, there's got to be a better way. And there's just, but that was our time. That was our time to dream and just us, her, I, and God, just to talk and dream and conceptualize and just try and figure it out, trying to understand where these stirrings were coming from, what they were meaning. And that's actually where, the idea for Younger Homes was born.
Yeah, we didn't know that it was Younger Homes at the time. We didn't know that, 9 years later, we would be sitting in this room talking to you, Sarah, about this successful green building home construction business that we've started. But it was just that tiny seed. And it was walking along the path at Terry Hershey in the park in nature. And Jesse said to me something that it's one of those moments that you just don't forget. You remember exactly where you were, the moment, the smells, the sounds. And he said, Danielle, I think we're called to work together as a team, and we are called to do something big. And I want to support our family in that. And that's all he said. And so, for us to correlate that to Younger Homes would have been a big mistake. And we didn't. That was, it was 8 years in the making. And It was these small steps that got us to this point. But that was a seed that was planted. And there were so many instances between then and now that got us here. Acts of faith, acts of obedience.
And that would be my encouragement back to myself in that stage would be, you always hear people's stories and it seems like there's just this one moment that does it. And that's not how it works. Like this is like probably Younger Homes is probably attempt number 27 at a business or an idea or something. But each one of those 26 led to something that allowed us to do Younger Homes. And it was a faithful following, even when we knew it was going to be a failure, a kamikaze mission. We still knew it was from God, and we gave it our all, everything.
And I think it would be worth just talking about a few of those things. Jesse's background is in construction. He was raised in a family of builders for his entire life. I was raised to appreciate nature in the hill country, a small town outside of San Antonio in Texas. And just those deep roots and those two separate things work together to form up kind of that foundation for what we feel like our mission is with our company. But the small steps from that seed being planted in Terry Hershey, gosh, I'm trying to think. One of the first things that we did after that, was it remodeling?
Yeah, it was remodeling the house.
We knew that our roots weren't in Houston, but we also knew that God had given us this home that had so much potential. And it ended up that home that we remodeled, that we, we thought at the time, we spent way too much on this house, but God said, no, do it, jump in. And then we remodeled and put even more money into it. And that equity ended up being that seed for Younger Homes to be started. And who would have known that when we first started the remodel? We had no idea. But that remodel also gave us some amazing construction experience.
So these small steps are so, I mean, listening to you, Jesse, about what you said to Danielle on that path in Hershey Park, I just got goosebumps like all over my body. And that dream that was spoken, then you just took the next step and you took the next step. And the fact that you remodeled the home that you had bought and you learned from that experience, like all of these steps are just woven together. I'm just in awe of God listening. It's just like, wow, God, you are so up to something. Do you need a safe place to connect with other creatives? I have a membership group called the Inner Circle of Small Beginnings, and it may be just the membership community that you have been looking for. It is safe, it is full of joy, full of caring people, and just so special. God's presence actually comes and rests on us as we meet together on live Zoom. I have people in this group from Australia to Africa and all over the United States. So it's a membership group where God is in the center of my weekly live teachings, all relevant about growing our relationship with Jesus and our increased faith in our daily creative walk. Y'all, here are some quotes from some of my members. This group has just been a delight. Here's another one. I really like Mondays now. Hey, we meet on Mondays. And I really like how Spirit-led you are. So y'all, my wait list is open now. Click on the link in the show notes and pre-registration will begin on July 28th. But when you get on the wait list now, you will be able to pre-register for my exclusive membership program at the discount price of $27 a month starting on July 28th. When you register after July 31st, the price will be going up to $37. The doors will be open only for a limited amount of time. So get on my wait list now for my private membership called Inner Circle of Small Beginnings with Sarah, and we will send you a free PDF of my favorite Bible translations. You're going to be so blessed that you made the decision to become a member. Be blessed. So y'all ended up selling the house in Houston, and then that was your seed money to start Younger Homes, or there was more in the middle?
There was some more in the
middle. There was some more. Oh man, there's always more in the middle. The middle is always the best part of everything, right? Like, give me that Oreo.
Yeah.
But I don't want to steal your thunder, Jesse, but for me as the wife and for Jesse as the husband, I feel like we have a very opposite story than most husband and wife partnerships.
Explain that. That's interesting.
In that typically, I think the husband is the stable, steady, go to the office every day, put on your suit, sit in your chair, do your work. The mom is usually I'm going to get a college education and then I'm going to work, but then I'm going to try some new things and then I'm going to focus on raising my kids. And, you have more freedom as a woman, arguably. For us, it was very opposite. I was the one who stayed and was happy, completely happy and fulfilled by my corporate career. So for 9 years, I worked and was happy to serve my family in that way, to go to the office while having 2 babies and taking them with me to daycare. I was completely filled up by doing that. Jesse, on the other hand, he didn't just leave corporate once, he left corporate twice. He had a small business at one point. He worked for his dad at one point. He built motorcycles at one point. We did a second remodel on the house at one point. But I think he can speak to what that meant. But what I just wanted to say is, in everything, expect great things from God. Like, you just have to ask. And that is what the Bible tells us. And you don't have to conform to the world and its standards. Your story will look very different from everyone else's, but in it, being faithful to the calling at hand and to take that next step. So Jesse, I think you should talk about your
the
endeavors.
I'll talk about the middle, because that's kind of where it really all started to take shape. I feel like we had this idea on that walk, and that fundamental truth we kept going back to. Like, we knew that God spoke to us in that moment, and we kept going back to that moment in time where it's like, okay, like, God clearly spoke to us here. How are these next steps going to support that? So when we had our first daughter, Emily, I was naturally just hit with this conviction of, man, like, there's something more to life. Like, I saw that through Emily. And so after praying about it, we said, okay, well, I'm going to leave corporate. It's my third corporate job at this point. And I'm going to go, I think small business is where we're being called to.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dad had a very successful remodeling company that I worked for through high school. And I left corporate to go essentially take that over and run the business, because he was getting close to retirement. About a year in, it was clear, like, that wasn't the plan. But in that process, learned a lot about, how to run a business, how to run a construction business. And it was great, but it was also very hard to leave that, because, man, we really thought this was it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's checking most every box in my soul. It's so close. Mm-hmm. This might be it, mm-hmm. but it just wasn't. It was so clear it wasn't. And so when I left that job, I again just go to God and say, what's next? And through my corporate career, to keep my brain from going insane, at night I would tinker with a motorcycle. I'd build this motorcycle machine and weld, and just, that was my creative outlet. And so this thing was sitting there about 80% finished. It's like, well, let's do this, let's try and finish the bike and sell it. And if it sells well, let's do another one, and this is that moment when you're like, this is a kamikaze mission. There's no way this is going to work. But this is what God wants me to do. And so
this is in your garage.
In our garage in Houston.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we did. We spent the next 3 months. I finished it up. I marketed it. I learned about videography and marketing, and learned about photography, which was great experience. But the bike sold to some dentist in California for some amount, and it wasn't the amount we said. So it was like, okay, well, this is not this is not good. This is not our path.
Well, I think that's something that I've learned from Sarah too. It's like, when you pray and you ask God for direction, you can be specific, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we specifically had a number in mind for the sale of that bike.
That's right.
And it didn't come.
Yep. And so when it didn't come, we said, okay, what's next? We had this, chunk of cash from the bike, and I'm unemployed. So it was during the summer. And so what we did is we pulled Emily out of daycare, and I was able to be a daddy daycare and spend more time with her, which was amazing. And on the side, we used this money to to add on to our house and remodel the house in Houston
for the second time.
And so that was another 3 months of just, it was great. We had direction. I was producing something. I was spending time with my daughter. It was great.
But you were also sitting on your hands and you were waiting.
Not yet.
No?
I wasn't. Not yet.
Okay.
I was pretty good. I was content.
Okay.
Summer ended, Emily went back to daycare. The remodel kind of came to a close, and that's when it became very hard, because now I have no direction at all, and God's not giving me any answers. And that was the toughest time of my life, of my walk, was that moment, because I gained so much perceived value on producing and doing and being in control. And God made it clear I was supposed to sit and do nothing.
Wow.
And no matter how hard I tried, I could not find a job. I couldn't find anything to do. And my verse for that moment of my life was very clearly Psalm 23. And it says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside these quiet waters, so he can restore my soul." And it goes on to say that he does all this so that my cup will overflow.
Yes.
And the interesting word that stuck out to me there was that he makes me lie down. It's not a voluntary act, because for me to sit on my hands was so tough, man. And adding to it is, now we're getting into December, where we have successful corporate Danielle going to all of her Christmas parties. And here I am, the husband, who's unemployed, without direction.
Who I was so proud of.
But very different from the worldly standard to be.
But you were being faithful.
I was being faithful. And once again, God grew me, and he stripped away whatever idol that I had on producing and creating, that's where I got my worth from. He stripped that away, and it was beautiful.
And it was hard.
So hard.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this, Jesse. I think it's going to give a lot of people hope that may be in your same spot today.
I fix my eyes, I fix my eyes. You are the prize, you are the prize. I fix my eyes, I fix my eyes on you. You are the prize, you are the prize.
Aren't you waiting to listen and tune in next week to my podcast, Small Beginnings with Sarah, to hear the rest of Danielle and Jesse's story? They have learned to listen to God and be obedient for the next steps in their life, and I'm so excited that they were able to share in part today. But y'all, they'll be sharing in the next few weeks as well. So thank you so much for listening. You have an amazing week as you too start taking some of the things that Jesse and Danielle talk about and applying it in your own lives. And you know how I love to end my podcast, how good can God be?